Hi everyone, my name is Josh Randall. I'm a Ph.D. candidate at NC State University and an Energy Data Analytics Ph.D. student fellow. And today I'm going to be discussing scales of energy poverty, understanding energy justice through spatial analysis. So the first thing we want to discuss is what energy poverty is. So we traditionally think of it as income-based, but it's really more than affordability. The energy poverty literature states that it's multiple co-occurring factors that are associated with the access to energy. So there's a lot of things preventing people to be able to be comfortable in their homes. Importantly, where one lives makes a difference in how energy is accessed, delivered, and used. So geography plays an important role in energy poverty, and I'm very interested in how policy is linked with this geography, specifically both the spatial boundaries and the scales that we look at. These might change, and it changes the interventions and the different policies that might be in place. One of the most prescient examples of this is the state-ordered moratoriums during the COVID pandemic, specifically last October. That's where this data comes from. As we could see, different states had moratoriums, some moving between state lines. You would either be under a moratorium or you wouldn't, and this makes a major difference in how populations were dealing with energy poverty. If we aggregate this data, we could see that about a third of the U.S. population had a state-ordered moratorium, while about two-thirds didn't. However, when we aggregate this data, we lose all of the spatial context for this. We don't know where the moratoriums are or aren't, and that's just a basic example of the sort of things that I'm interested in looking at. So the main problem is that detecting and describing energy poverty at large scales hides signatures of energy poverty, as we talked about in the previous example, but it might highlight others. So the main questions I'm looking at are: what are the spatial patterns of energy poverty signatures in North Carolina? What energy poverty signatures are scale agnostic, meaning they occur across all of the different geographic scales that we might look at, or scale dependent, meaning they're very specific. The methods I use are principal components analysis and geographically weighted principal components analysis. The first step of this work was to use a principal components analysis on around 15 different variables in order to reduce the complexity of the data and try to understand where these vulnerabilities might overlap. I did this at 3 geographic scales: a census tract, a county, and a community action agency, which is just a conglomerate of counties, and this is all within North Carolina. So a census tract, there's about 2,000 of them. In the counties, there's there's exactly 100 in North Carolina, and then 33 community action agencies. The resulting components from the principal components analysis, I call these energy poverty signatures, and there was about 9 from the 3 different scales I looked at. And interestingly, 2 of the 9 signatures were present at all 3 geographic scales, and these are the scalar agnostic signatures, meaning no matter where we looked, we were able to detect them. The first one is socioeconomics, things like disability and poverty status conglomerated there. And then the last signature, 6, was older homes using non-electric heating fuel. So I won't go into depth with the other ones, but this shows that which signatures will not be hidden by aggregation, 1 and 6, which is particularly important in instances where we don't have data at these finer scales, and places such as 2 and 5, where things might be hidden if you're not looking at that specific scale. Second, we can map these PCA outputs. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, other than to say that there is some big geographic variations of the principal components, and this can illuminate some of the areas that might be more important to target when we're talking about intervention. Lastly, we can use a geographically weighted principal components analysis, which means we run a PCA at every single one of these locations and use the surrounding census tracts as opposed to all of the census tracts in order to get a more locally developed principal components analysis. In this case, it outputs the most important variable in the first component, which gives us a general sense of what might be very important in those areas. As we can see, it changes quite drastically across North Carolina, from the lack of electric heat all the way to an older ages. Very, very different, not all socioeconomic as you might expect from previous. To recap, location matters, or more specifically, scale matters, but it is important to know when it doesn't. So scale agnostic means these signatures are important no matter what. You have to pay attention to them. Scale dependency means you might miss these if you're looking at aggregated data or you only have data for one specific scale. This is an energy justice issue. You might miss different types of energy poverty signatures. Secondly, local makes a difference. A global PCA can identify broad trends, but with the GWPCA, we can identify local importance, where something like fuel type, for example, might be much more important than socioeconomics. Interventions must be local to be successful. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation and to the Duke University Energy Data Analytics PhD Student Fellowship, and please let me know if you have any questions.